Good evening, Dayton. Welcome to the Town of Dayton Planning Board regular meeting and public hearing this Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. Please join me for the
Recording in progress.
Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to ask, once we get done with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you could please have a moment of silence so we can, in memory of the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion that is taking place tomorrow. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In memory of the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, June 6, 1944, and in memory and honor of all of those who served, I request a moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chairman, the Stormwater Committee has our special meeting posted and we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to make your official opening?
Yeah, it will be the same as, what do you call them? The other one to order. Be the same.
All right, thank you. You have organized the board. I'm assuming that's.
Oh, my bad.
I totally missed when I printed this. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
I confirm the next meeting will be held on Wednesday, July 17th, 2024, same time. And the first order of business is to review, discuss, and act on Justin and Stephanie Pratt, 14 Maris Lane, map 9, lots 57, lot 57, tac 9, water damage problem. Is there somebody here to present on the matter, or is
So
it,
we
we just have our material?
An email from Attorney Braze. Thank you for your note. My client has retained Level 1 engineering to assist in the resolution of the pending issue. At this time, we don't have any substantive materials to present. I anticipate the engineer completing his work in the next 2 to 4 weeks, and I will contact you to get on the agenda.
Okay. So we're just gonna table this for now?
Yep.
We have to vote to table, or just, no?
No.
Okay, not sure about that. Next item on the agenda is Hunters Hill subdivision, map 21 with the lots listed there in the agenda. And it's the release of the 53G Funds and Homeowners Trust Maintenance Bond. All right.
So they're wrapping up the final purchase and sale
Okay.
between Longbuilt and Antonio. In order to do that, Antonio has some funds in the 53G account, and he also has a posted Hunters Hill Homeowners Trust Maintenance Bond
Okay.
that's in the amount of $75,504.54. So what we need to do is close that out so we can reimburse him, and today Longbuilt dropped off a check to replace this one.
Okay.
So that's, part's all set. And then we also need a release of the 53G account in the amount of $126.50.
That's the second page there.
Yeah, it's,
650.
yep. I have it right here if you want me to
Yeah, I've got it
hand
right
it to
here.
you.
I've got it right here.
Okay,
All right, so, so is this two separate motions?
yes.
Okay. All right, so we are accepting or we're closing out the previous 53G account, right? All right, so entertain, can somebody make a motion to close out the previous 53G account on the amount of $75,000?
No, the 53G is in the amount of $126.50.
Oh, that's the one we're closing?
Just the 53G. It's not being closed, it's being, the 123 is gonna be released.
It's gonna be
back to him.
released.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, to make a motion to release the amount of $126.50 from the 53G account for Hunter Hill subdivision.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion before I take it to a vote? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 4 ayes. And what were we doing with the 75K again?
Wait, same thing, you're going to release that amount?
Release that amount? Okay, because
Release that amount.
it's negative here, so, oh, it's a credit, 75K.
That's our accounting, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
It's very confusing.
yeah, you're
Flip
right,
it.
yeah, it's accounting speak, I get it now. It's a debit. All right, it's a credit of 75K. Okay, I'd like to entertain another motion to release, also from the 53G?
This is from the
Ledger.
maintenance
This is our
bond, the
maintenance bond.
homeowner's maintenance bond.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Entertain a motion to release in the amount of $75,504.54 from the maintenance bond for Hunter's Hill subdivision.
I'll make that one.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Sitting on that, Carrie? That's that one, yes?
That's all on that one, yes.
Excellent, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the end-of-year transfer for clerical union. So in your package, you got the details there.
So in the clerical, we finalized our clerical union contract way back when.
Okay,
Now we're at the year end, and they had money set aside in one of their accounts in order to make the union contract whole. So we just need a motion to approve the transfer in the amount of $593.
all right. Yeah, go for it.
I'll make that one.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Next item on the agenda was to discuss the coordination between the town permitting authorities and project inspections. As of the last meeting, we kind of closed out our comments, right, and we consolidated them and passed them all over to Town Administrator's office and the Board of Selectmen's office for consolidation. Did we hear back from Lisa on her comments?
She said that her board has not,
Oh, I did see your email. Right.
Waiting to get in.
yeah, is she?
Yeah.
Oh, right there. 3 people are in the waiting room. Whoops. On the top. Yeah, I just hit admit all, I guess. There you go. Yeah,
My
I did.
glasses, so I can't.
I did see her email, actually. She said
Okay.
that they haven't had a chance to review it as a board, so she's still working on getting their comments. So we're just gonna push
We
this
can
out.
just table it. Okay,
Floodgates are open. All right. All right, now we're on to public hearings. First public hearing is David Butler, trustee of the Butler Family Irrevocable Trust, 833 William Street, map 8, lot 20 and 21, special permit application. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing for that agenda item. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, is the applicant present this evening to make a presentation?
so I have another one.
Continuance, right?
They would like to continue today's public hearing
Got it.
to the July 17th, and they're hoping that their ANRAD will be approved by that time. So we just need a motion to continue.
Make a motion to continue?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That was a very fast public hearing.
Yeah.
Next is also a public hearing for, I'll just call them Grasshopper Energy.
Yeah.
893 Brook Street, map 16, lot 28, special permit and site plan review modification. I'd like to make somebody make a motion to open the public hearing for that topic.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, public meeting is now open, and there's somebody here to present on the topic.
Before you do that, can you read the public notice into record, please?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stand by. Here it is. Legal notice, Dayton Planning Board, June 5th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Notice is hereby given. The Dayton Planning Board will conduct a public hearing of the modification of a special permit and site plan review for Grasshopper Energy for a redesign of Stormwater Basin 1 and submit maintenance items for Stormwater Basin 3, the property located at 893 Brook Street, being shown as Assessor's Map 16, Lot 28, pursuant to Sections 4600, 5300, and 5400 of the Town of Dayton zoning bylaws. Copies of the application and plan may be viewed in the Planning Board office during normal business hours or requested by email at keeasterday@dayton-mass.gov. Any person wishing to be heard on the above application should appear at the time and place designated for the public hearing. Time, Dayton Planning Board, Jeff Cavallo, Chairman. Evening. Doing well, how are you?
Good.
Here as well.
Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, Nick Fasandola here on behalf of the project developer and applicant. So we're here tonight for a modification to an existing special permit. Copies of the original issued special permit were included in the submission package. I'm sure the board's well familiar with the site over on the corner of Brook and Pine Street, existing constructed solar facility. The parcel's approximately 10 acres with the solar facility encompassing a little bit more than half of that land area. We're here tonight for a modification of the special permit to modify one of the stormwater basins. This is a basin that has not been functioning properly. It's been retaining stormwater for a prolonged period of time. It is identified as Basin 1, which is located by the entry point of the site. This basin was initially approved and designed to fully infiltrate, meaning that there's no piped outlets. It only had a overflow, a spillway, as an outlet structure for this basin. There's been some work done over the past few years. So with the initial construction of the basin wasn't to par or on spec with the way it was supposed to be constructed. We've been working with the Stormwater Committee over the last few years to rectify those issues. Unfortunately, the basin is still not draining despite all the measures to correct some issues that we had during the initial construction phase with the original site contractor. And the site, the basin has been properly regraded, so we have the proper shape and volume that it's originally supposed to have, but we're still not getting the infiltration. So what we're proposing this evening is to install a subdrain, which would be a network of 4-inch perforated pipes, same pipes you would use for a septic system or something of that nature, embedded in the stone at the base of the basin at the lowest point, kind of closest to where the existing outlet is, or spillway. So we're proposing a network of pipes. There's going to be 4 50-foot long perforated pipes, and then those will connect to a 4-inch solid drainage pipe that will be the discharge for that water, and then that will be directed towards the existing splash pad and what they call a level spreader that's been installed for that basin. Having a subdrain on an infiltration basin, it's a standard practice for infiltration basins. If you went to the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook and looked up the section on infiltration basins, there's a detail for an infiltration basin, and it has a subdrain included with it. So this is nothing uncommon. It wasn't included in the original design or the original review. We didn't prepare the permitting documents and original calculations for this project, but this is something that probably should have been included with the original design, but it wasn't. And they're always there to slowly drain out the basin, because over time, it doesn't matter how good of soils you have, these basins will eventually need some maintenance work, and so having piped outlets that let the water out at a slow and controlled rate help with the basins working for a longer period of time. That's the only change we're proposing this evening. It's essentially just a minor modification of this basin. In the package, we prepared some calculations to support our design. So having this piped outlet will not increase the flow rates. That's typically what we're trying to mitigate when we design a stormwater management system. So we analyze what the flow rate was coming off the site during the pre-development conditions when it was wooded. And then we look at the condition after it's been constructed and what the flow rate will be. And that's why we install stormwater basins, because the water goes into those basins, it slows it down, and it's supposed to either infiltrate or release that water at a slow and contained flow to closely mimic what the initial or existing flow rates were. So installing this 4-inch pipe will not exceed the pre-development conditions. I think that's an important fact here to recognize as far as flow rates go, and that's what you design these to. It'll be a little bit higher flow than the original approved design, because that design had included a lot of infiltration. And the way you calculate that is you use an infiltration rate. So how much water is the ground going to soak up? You know, typically it's how many inches per hour. And based on the initial calculations and the soil test holes that were witnessed by the town, the original design engineer used an infiltration rate of 2.4 inches an hour. So that's a significant amount of water that can be soaked in by the soil. In the updated analysis, I changed that to 0.27 inches an hour, which is substantially low, which more accurately reflects the conditions that we're dealing with. And it's mostly deeper subsoil conditions, as were identified by a report done by Weston and Sampson for the Stormwater Committee that identified these very low permeability soils at depths of greater than 10 feet when the Stormwater Committee asked them to take a look at the basin and help to identify why is it not draining. And their recommendations also included to install some sort of outlet structure or outlet configuration that would slowly help release the water and ensure that this basin does drain properly. And the analysis point for the drainage has always been, there's a wetland located here in this area. We actually installed a concrete culvert bridge structure to bridge that wetland. So the water has always gone to that area, and it's going to continue to go to that area and work its way down that existing channel, which is adjacent to Brook Street and down the hill. So we're not changing the flow paths, we're not changing the geometry of the basin. This is a relatively straightforward fix. We're going to maintain as much of the basin as we can. It's mostly just working in the bottom of the basin, installing this drainage network of pipes and that one small outlet. So based on the calculations that I included with the report, which I'm assuming will be peer reviewed by the town's choice of consultants, this should theoretically drain within 32 hours, ballpark, based on the size of the pipe, the pitch of the 4-inch pipe that's proposed, and the volume that this can handle. And on this plan, I'm sorry I didn't describe this earlier, this looks different than the original permit approval plans, because this is an existing conditions plan of what's there today. So this is where the existing driveway, how it's been installed. This is how the site and the basins look today. So this isn't theoretical. We based our analysis off of the existing grades, the elevations that we have currently, in an attempt to fix this. So that pretty much sums up this minor modification request that I believe it's a major modification, but in essence, minor as in we're just keeping the same basin location. Flow rates aren't going to increase from previously existing conditions, and we're going to work with what we currently have in there to rectify this problem, because I know the neighbors, I know the town, I know the applicant, everybody wants to have this basin working so we can all move on and turn this solar field on and start generating power and, make it do what it's supposed to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, members of the board, I guess we'll go here, then we can go to yours as well. So, anybody have any questions for the applicant?
I don't,
Yeah, interested to hear what stormwater says,
Yes,
not myself.
I'd like to hear from our engineer and from conservation. They're the experts.
Good.
I'm really not an expert on, basins. But I did tell you, before this project ever started, that's a very wet area. The water has to go somewhere,
So I just have a question for clarification. So you're putting in the PVC inlets on Basin 1, and they're getting routed to the existing channel
Correct. So,
adjacent to Brook? Is that the plan?
so these pipes, I'll speak loud, hopefully the mic can pick it up. These pipes are all embedded in the stone.
Mm-hmm.
And they're perforated, so they'll have, you know, I think it's half-inch perforations
Right.
throughout the pipe. And
Okay.
that's gonna collect the water. So in essence, we want as much water to soak into the ground as possible. But
Mhm.
when this basin and the soil becomes so saturated that it can't infiltrate any more water,
Mhm.
those perforated pipes will then carry the water to the solid pipe for it to discharge.
Got it.
Which that solid pipe begins right here in this area. And we're gonna come out and discharge to this little that existing splash pad area that we have here. So
Okay.
it's, you know, hopefully we'll get some infiltration.
So it's channeling it to the direction of all of that existing,
Correct, and,
Wetlands.
you know,
I think
the way the
that's
grades
one of the
went.
reasons why it never drained before is because that soil underneath there never really gets to dry because the amount of water that runs in that direction, right past their house. I mean, I've been driving by their house for a long time, and that water, before we ever cut a tree down, we just fly down the street and go around the corner. That area is usually very wet, so it's gonna have to drain somehow. You know, and it's unfortunate that this has been going on and on and
perforated
on.
solid there.
I mean, I feel like putting armor on my Christmas card list, for God's sakes. You know, we need to get this cleared up, but we can't do it unless our engineer, the town's engineer, and conservation agrees. on this.
100%, that's why we
Right.
provided the calculations.
I'm relying on the experts,
Yes.
but, you know, it's going on long enough.
All right, anything else, gentlemen? All right, pass it over. Do you have a microphone back there, or how's this gonna work?
No, they can come.
I can sit.
So, how deep is the pipe from the surface, the perforated pipe?
The perforated pipe will be just a few inches below the final grade of the stone. So we're going to add a little bit more stone because the existing floor elevation was a little bit low on where it should have been. So we're going to, you know, pull out some of that stone, get the pipes at the proper levels. They have a 0.5% pitch going from the back of the basin towards the front, and it's going to be about 3 inches of stone on top, it's minimal.
Mr. Ferry, do you mind coming up just so we can make sure we get it on the recording?
And then the other question I had was, because I have the plan you shared with me. The elevation of stone, does it have to be higher now if it needed to be, or can it be added higher in the future if needed to be, just to create more storage but yet still be drier?
Correct, and that's part of the reason why we're doing it. It's going to provide a little bit of buffer, so when this thing does fill up, the stone will provide storage, while at the same time when it's draining away. I mean, the basin will fill up when we have these crazy, 3-4 inch storm events.
Right, my question is, because I see that the stone is gonna be pretty much the grade that we're seeing now.
Yeah, about 6 inches higher.
Right.
Yep.
So if you needed it higher, can it still be added in the future, or it needs to be considered now?
We'd have to take a look at the volume to make sure we're not losing so much capacity, because the way the stone works is it provides about 40% of
And there's
void
displacement.
storage, yeah.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that we have enough volume to hold the water that would come in from the larger storm events, so we don't let out too much too quickly. But there is some room to add a little bit extra stone if needed.
Thank you.
What are you capping this off with? Just stone?
It'd be crushed filter fabric and crushed stone. It already exists there today. That's what we had them line the bottom of the basin with, because one of the ideas when this originally was not working was if it's loam and seed, that loam, when the water fills up, kind of compresses and almost makes it harder for it to drain. So we then moved to filter fabric with crushed stone to stabilize the bottom, with the hopes that it would drain better. It hasn't come to fruition that way. So, but we are going to keep it crushed stone That way we have a little bit of storage, and it's easier to maintain. You can get in there and pull the stone out if you need to clean it out, if you do get sediment in there in the long
Is
run.
there any kind of vegetation being added to the top of this at all? Or is it
To the floor of the basin, there'll be no vegetation, strictly crushed stone in this area here.
So that it has to be maintained how often?
The stone, I mean, the basin should be inspected periodically, a couple times a year, where you go out and you observe the basin to make sure it's draining properly, and you check the outlets, make sure they're not cleared. You know, an animal runs up there and dies and clogs the pipe. So you do have that maintenance, but about every 10 years or so, this may need to have the stone pulled back and the filter fabric replaced, in case that does get gummed up with any sediment that comes off the site. But the site has been seeded. It's primarily stabilized. It's not 100%, but it does have decent vegetative growth on there, versus a year ago we were looking at a bare site, just having sediment and everything kind of washing into that low point as the basin. So the vegetation has helped some. It actually slows the water down and helps it soak up through the roots of the grass. But ideally, what I put in my maintenance reports is that you should plan about every 10 years to refresh the bottom of this, just as it may have sediment that does go into it.
Was this sediment removed before you guys did this?
Yeah, we've reconstructed the whole bottom of the basin, and then they went in there and cleaned it out a second time once we realized that this wasn't working. So there's been a substantial amount of work that's been going on over the years to try and get this configuration of basin to work, but based on.
Was that inspected by anybody from the town?
Previously, Mr. Pilling, was out there. Him and I had multiple site meetings. We did test pits in the bottom of the constructed basin a few years back, and had constant conversations about how to fix it properly and how to make this thing work. We did our best to work within the parameters of the current approved plan, but it's obviously not working. That's why we're here tonight, to request a modification to have that sub-drain network installed.
The only thing that concerns me is the fact that it's been done a couple of times. And I think there was one time that we requested that somebody from the town to inspect this before it was capped.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
I don't know if it was.
I thought Nancy was saying was her.
So when it didn't drain the first time, and they hired a second company to come in and dig up everything and found the boulders and the stumps, they built a new system, still didn't drain. So the next thing that happened was Grasshopper paid to have Weston and Sampson go in, and they dug test holes. And engineer Jim Pearson was there, I was there, Tom Ferry was there. Mr. LaChance locally did the digging, and that's when they took all the samples of the material they dug out of the holes. And the very last sample was this blue-gray stuff that looked like clay. So based on that last dig up, they discovered what the problem was, and that's when this type of system was again discussed. And when it came to the Stormwater Committee, because of the nature of what they wanted to do, we were quite sure this was going to be a major modification, so we asked them to get in touch with Kerry and your committee, and that's why we're here tonight. But yes, the last time this got dug up and nothing was replaced, it was just dig it up, figure out what the problem is, and then they presented this design.
Was that clay removed in any way?
No, that clay we found was in the last test hole, which was at least 10 feet deep,
It
Tom?
was like 12 feet deep.
It was way down. I took pictures of all the stuff, okay? So all of this was just gathering information and evidence of what we finally determined the problem is and there was also water running into the hole, like groundwater. The high water mark that we could see on the side of the hole was about 4 feet down. There was the high water mark. But if you saw the size of the boulder, the giant one that was taken out, the one I had my picture taken next to, you had to dig an enormous hole and a deep hole to bury that thing. It was huge.
you
Still
keep
there,
that
I
rock?
think. But, yeah, pictures. But in any case, when we went there that day, and then the material was sent out to a testing lab, and all those reports came back, and Mr. Pearson gave his report from Weston and Sampson. That's what brought us to this point today. It appears this is the only solution to this problem.
I'm just surprised that when they found that clay, that they didn't try to break through that. Because if you broke through that, then the problem would have been solved right there, depending on how deep it is. 12 feet for it to be, I mean, there are machines that go down over 20 feet, you know, and
Can I say something?
sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there really is no clay in this area. It's just, what that is subsoil, correct? And it's more like a glade soil.
Correct. That's what I wasn't at the test holes that day, just going by the report. It's a material that has a lot of fines and silts in it that, essentially when water hits that material, it swells and it doesn't let any water through. So to speak to your comment, typically standard practice when you're designing an infiltration basin, you dig down about 10 feet, maybe a little bit less if you hit groundwater when you do test holes. And, the original engineer, Atlantic Engineering, they did have test holes dug. They were witnessed by the town's agent. The material appeared to be relatively good, which warranted the classification of the 2.4 inches an hour infiltration rate. And then they also look for seasonal high groundwater because the bottom of an infiltration basin, it's got to be at least 2 feet above that seasonal high groundwater mark. So, there was nothing originally that would have indicated that this would have been a problem. Like I said, if I had designed it originally, I would have included the subdrain to begin with, but that's neither here nor there. We are where we are. But, based on the information I saw and the way that, the procedure that occurred was, they had an engineer do test holes, licensed soil evaluator in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That was observed by the town's agent. Todd's a qualified soil evaluator. He was doing perk tests and evaluations for septic systems. It's the same type of soil evaluation that you would do to determine high groundwater and the type of soil that you have. So I don't think there's anything wrong or any malice in that initial testing and essentially design work, other than there was no piped outlet or subdrain that was installed to begin with.
Yeah,
But
it's just a different approach. It's just a different design approach.
Yeah.
Any more questions for the applicant, Mrs. Goulart?
Is this basin going to look like a basin when we're done? Like, when the basin was constructed, even though it wasn't working, it resembles the football field with a wall all the way around it, with grass growing in it. Will there be any vegetation growing in that basin? And is it going to have a flat bottom like a stormwater infiltration basin?
So the bottom low elevation will be crushed stone. And it's going to remain crushed
That's what you're going
stone.
to see when you look into it?
When you look in the bottom, the side slopes are going to be grass, stabilized grass. The top berm will all be grass to match the surrounding area. So everything's going to be grassed except for the bottom.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
it.
And the other question is, Lisa, Nick referred to that wet area that's to the, if I'm standing inside the basin looking at the street, looking at the bridge, it's to the left. Is that all set with conservation as far as this system and that wetland?
You mean to the north, right?
Yes, yes.
Am I all set how? I don't understand the question. I have a question specifically about the area. Are we removing any more trees? Are we leaving the existing disturbed area at all?
So for the record, all the work is going to occur within the approved limit of site disturbance that was approved by Planning Board and Conservation Commission. You know, the closest we're going to get to that wetland is working within that riprap area. So we're well, I mean, we're within the buffer zone because part of the basin does exist in the buffer zone. But
Right.
we're within the current approved limit of disturbance, with most of the work occurring inside the basin to get this pipe network in. And then we just have that one little 4-inch pipe that's coming out. So,
Coming up from to the northeast?
correct, yes. It's gonna go,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
gonna be installed just to the right of that riprap pad that exists today. Then we're gonna have, we're gonna expand that out a couple feet, just because it would be a lot more disturbance to pull out all that riprap to get this tiny little 4-inch pipe in properly. So we're gonna dig just to the right of it to make it a little bit easier to install and have less site disturbance. And then expand the splash pad to, you know, cover the area of the discharge of that 4-inch pipe.
Yeah, Nancy, I don't have any issues with
Okay,
any of
and-
that. Assuming that Weston and Sampson release all the stormwater.
Right, and obviously, Stormwater Committee is waiting to hear from Weston and Sampson, because our decision, like the planning board, is gonna be based on their recommendations, because they're the engineering firm that's now involved with this. The reason I asked about that is, when we initially discussed this at the stormwater meeting, and I don't know if you were at that meeting, the concern was we didn't know if, when they started construction, they would go beyond the site that had already been approved. And I knew there were wetlands, so we didn't want to make a decision on wetlands, so thank you. I'm all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to first check to see if there's any more comments or questions from any town officials prior to asking the engineer if he has any comments.
So I can read in the Concom's comment from their email into record if you'd like.
Yeah, I've got it here from Lisa.
Yeah.
It said, email from Lisa Caledonia, Monday, June 3rd, 2024. Hi Carrie, in response to your request for comments regarding this modification, due to there being no new disturbance proposed, which we just confirmed now, the Conservation Commission will accept the revised designs without the need for revisions to their permit. The redesigned basin has been proposed within the existing infiltration basin footprint and within the limits of disturbance previously proposed to the Conservation Commission. Work outside of this area will potentially require a new application for notice of intent to the Conservation Commission. Thank you, Lisa. All right, so that's that. So are there any comments from Weston and Sampson at this time, or are you just here absorbing?
Primarily here absorbing. If you want, I can go through the analysis that we did. Be happy to do that. Did that for the Stormwater Committee a couple of weeks back. Yeah, at this point, I concur with what's been said. It is fairly standard practice to have a subdrain in these systems, so that's not at all unusual. As long as it stays within the existing footprint, we wouldn't see a major problem with it. Of course, we would want to take a look at the stormwater report, the drainage reports, and do a review of the plan set for you before giving you a final opinion.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna table that for now, because what I want to do is I want to swing this to any public comment, if anyone would like to.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add? Do we know who Kevin is? Is he in a butter? Could Kevin identify himself, please?
Kevin,
Because if he's in a butter, I want to note it in the minutes, or,
Are you asking for Kevin? I'm sorry.
yes. Could you identify yourself?
I'm a representative of Clean Capital. We're looking to transfer this property, potentially transfer this property into new ownership. So I'm just here observing to see if the modification is going to get approved or not.
Okay, we're still dealing with Grasshopper, I assume. Okay, thank you. Comment I wanted to make when Nick was talking about maintenance. Have you prepared a maintenance, as part of the work you've done for Grasshopper, have you provided a maintenance plan? Because when you say in 10 years this should be done, the town is not going to do that. The town will do inspections, but there has to be a maintenance plan on annual work, and, I mean, it can't grow up into trees and stuff like that. And so there should also be, especially if this project's going to eventually be transferred, before it gets transferred, sold, or whatever's going to happen to it, there should be on file a maintenance plan that's acceptable to the town. Because again, we will do inspections. We are not going out at town expense and maintain basins.
No, understood. I believe a maintenance plan was part of the initial approval, but if you'd
Does that
like
ring
me
a bell?
to,
I don't remember the 10-year basin maintenance. I have to go back and read through it.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as it's understood the town's not doing this at its expense, the town will look to enforce it.
correct. So there is an O&M plan that was approved. If, you know, the review of the consultant comes up with, if they come up with some other items they'd like to have added to that plan, I'll be more than happy to write a new current O&M plan for the site as it, you know, exists today. I have no problem doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there should be some type of a maintenance plan, who's gonna mow, when they're gonna mow, who's gonna inspect the fences, stuff like that.
I have one more question, Nick, I'm sorry. Are you going to obviously make sure the erosion controls are, maintained and in place for the duration of this, obviously until this is, got a certificate of compliance?
Yes, I mean, it's still open, the project still has their open order with you guys, but if you want to meet up on site and take a walk, and we could highlight any areas that may need to be touched up, as they will be having a contractor on site, I'd be more than happy to do that with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah, we'll circle up, I'll shoot you an email at some point in the next week or two.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
At this point, I
Okay,
want to
thank you.
take public input. If there's any more questions from any officials, we can wrap it up at the end.
Lorraine Beausoleil, 1680 Pine Street.
Alan Beausoleil, 1680 Pine.
So, if I could ask Nick, you said that this would drain within, if full, 32 to 36 hours, correct?
Correct.
Correct, if full.
In full, so I'm confident that it will completely drain within 72 hours is the requirement, but
Correct.
the analysis, the capacity of the pipe we're proposing, and, you know, Weston and Sampson will look at the calculation I provided and verify that, or, you know, say they don't agree with it, but the way we're looking at it is that that pipe flowing full, when this basin is full of water, should carry enough water within 32 hours to empty the volume that's held by that basin.
And you said that there wouldn't be much more drainage coming out, much more water coming out than what we already see, the flow.
Correct. So the way that the analysis is done, we look at what's coming off the land and you pick a point. So the point that was picked in this analysis was, you know, that receiving wetland in that area. So based on the calculations that were done, it falls within or less than what was calculated as the existing flow. But I mean, like I said, it's a 4-inch pipe. This is going to drain slowly over time, but it fills up through those large storm events. You know, when you have a half-inch rainfall event, the basin should be able to absorb that much water, even with the poor infiltration rate. It's when we have these large events that the basin fills up to a certain degree, and then the soil starts to swell, and then it can't drain.
But then it should drain within that.
Correct.
You're saying within the 32 to, let's say, 72 hours,
Correct.
right? Okay,
It sounds
well-
like the calculations are made for worst-case scenario.
It's, well, what concerns me is that when the basin isn't even full, it takes 2 to 4 weeks for it to drain. So I can't see how there's going to be little drainage coming out of there if it's going to be gone within 32 to 72 hours, if it takes 2 to 4 weeks and it's not even full.
Yeah, currently, it's not working. That's why it's.
Correct.
So that's
But
the proposal
then that
tonight.
water's got to, gotta leave, so there's gonna be more flow. A lot more flow, because this water sits there for 2 to 4 weeks.
Right, but they're not just dumping it right, I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in here, just make sure I understand. They're not just dumping it into the wetlands, they're dumping it into the riprap ahead of the wetlands where it will dissipate, and eventually make it to the wetlands. So it's not gonna be a direct flow.
Well, could I just show you on here, or ask you on here? So if it comes in here, correct?
Yep.
So where does it go from here?
It's gonna drain through here and kind of, this is a little depression, which they call plunge pool, which will help kind of even out the flow that
Yeah.
kind of dissipates over this area. Then it drains over land into this little channel
Yeah.
right through here and then down. So, hold on,
Okay,
hold
down
on.
the street?
So before the site was cut and developed, all the water from this property to the north and everything up here worked its way based on the site grades to this area. Now, it wasn't a pipe, but that's what created this wetland here, this wetland here. All the water came down and followed the natural topography until it hit this point, and then it went down the channel that exists next to Brook Street. So we're mimicking, the goal was to mimic that flow path. And this was what I called, we called the analysis point. So everything came from the site, eventually came to this point. So we look at, and this is the way the analysis is done, we looked at this point, how much water theoretically came from up here, not the whole site, because some of it goes back through there, but came through this central section and down to here, and then made its way down the channel. As one of the members said, a lot of water, that's why they called it Brook Street, I guess, has always come down this area. So it's always been an area that's seen relatively high stormwater flows through this area. This is it's almost like a ditch, I think they called it an intermittent stream that comes all the way down through here. So there's a lot of surface runoff that's always been making its way down through here.
Okay. I've lived here for over 40 years. Yes, this has always been here. And this has been here. Not like it has been. There's been trees here to drink up the water. So the amount of water is different. So it's not the amount of water that we see coming through here now. It's a lot more water coming through here
I wouldn't,
now. A lot.
it's different because right now everything's being held by this pond that's not draining, and when it eventually fills up, it overtops, right? And then that's when water comes out. So before it gets to that point where it has to overtop, we're gonna release it slowly and let it drain out and come out through this area and make its way down to Brook Street. And I believe there's a larger wetland complex, a couple hundred feet, where am I going? East, down Brook Street through that area. And we install the basin and calculate the size of the basin to make up for the trees no longer being there. So we're changing the runoff characteristics. That's why we do these calculations and we size these basins. We put the stormwater basin in to slow the water, to catch it, slow it down, and either let it drain into the soil if possible. Obviously, in this situation, we've all learned that it's not possible to have it drain into the ground. So the next best option is to slowly release it. And a 4-inch pipe is pretty much the smallest pipe that we can safely use to drain this pipe, to drain this pond out. I could have tried maybe have specified a 8 or 12-inch pipe. That would have drained it out much faster, but it would have been too much flow coming out at once. It would have inundated this little channel down through here. It would have been too much flow. So the goal is to collect the water, slowly release it, and do our best to match what the previous existing condition was.
Who is supposed to be monitoring the construction of this? Whose responsibility is that?
Well, I would imagine town representation, right? I mean, I know that the building commissioner will occasionally do site visits. Mr. Ferry has been known to also stop in and do visits during the construction phases.
Who's going to be watching to make sure it's working properly? Whose responsibility is that?
Water
I
conservation.
think Weston and Sampson, right?
He'll be doing
Wouldn't be me because I don't review stormwater basins, I'm not an engineer, but Weston and Sampson would have to be doing that for the town.
We've got to wait for a good,
Something that you wanted us to do, we could do that through proposal.
and truly, to find out if it's gonna work, we gotta wait for rain. Now,
I know.
if the rain continues the way it has been, we'll probably have some good testing weather. If we get a drought like we had last year, there's no way to test it. So
It'll be a year
Mother
before we can
Nature
test it.
is, the testing of this thing and whether or not it's gonna work properly is gonna depend on Mother Nature. But certainly, Weston and Sampson is still the town engineer, and they would submit a proposal to be able to monitor this thing. It's not gonna be permitted to go forward if it doesn't work. What we're looking at is what our engineers and what their engineers are saying. This is the solution.
So nothing can be done until we find that it's working.
Correct.
It can't go online, it can't
No,
be connected.
they will not be allowed
They will
to
not
go
be
online.
connected until we know.
It's into everybody's best interest to make sure this works.
Okay.
They want to get it done, and we want them to get it done.
And one more thing. You mentioned that the berm is going to have all grass on it.
Well, there's landscaping that needs to be
Yeah.
done on top.
We never got our trees yet.
Correction.
Seven-
The trees were installed, they were taken off the berm when the basin was
No.
reconstructed.
Yeah,
That
and-
was the east side. We never got them on the north side.
I believe you're misspeaking.
No,
on
I'm not
the north
misspeaking.
side.
On the top of the berm. The trees were there.
You did the east side,
They were on the east side,
no north side.
not the north side. Never on the north side.
Never.
Yes. That's still part of the overall
Right.
permit, but I
But-
believe some trees were installed and they had to be taken out when the thing was
But
reconstructed.
if
The
I'm
east side.
correct, they may not be around for the end of this, correct?
So what happens when they're off and they sell the thing and we still don't have our trees? It's the 7th planting season we've been waiting.
Mr. Chairman,
We'll note this, yes, ma'am.
if I may, at one of the Stormwater Committee meetings, when we were talking about maintenance, and this was before or after the second attempt to reconstruct failed, it was Mr. Aguirre that talked about having a bond posted to cover landscaping, which means if trees die or trees aren't planted or whatever, if the owner doesn't do it, we will have a bond to do it. But that was discussed because this issue was raised at Stormwater before, so.
That can be a condition on how we.
Well, like if one of those other big trees out back falls down across the fence, who's gonna fix that? There's gotta be money in a bond for that kind of stuff too. So that'd all be landscaping bond too. But I don't think you have a problem putting in those trees back, right, sir?
Nick?
Yep.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
But the construction on the berm, not the berm, the basin, needs to be done first.
Yep.
Correct.
Oh, I know,
And
I know.
that's why they haven't been installed permanently.
Yeah.
Like I said, they started doing it, they got some of them in, and then we came to a realization of the issue with the initial construction of the basin.
Mhm.
There's no point to put them back in, just to pull them out, put the additional trees in, but the trees, the planting began, some of those trees were taken out, they were transplanted other places around the site, from what I understand, where some trees had died, you know, there was a few dead trees, along.
Those are still dead. They've never been replanted.
The
Mike,
trees that
the
were
trees-
there.
I
the
live
trees
there,
went
I
out
know.
and bought,
Transplanted.
The trees I went out and bought, we
No,
bought,
that was-
and I planted, they're alive.
No, no one replanted the dead trees.
Any more questions
Yes, I
specifically
do.
about this? Okay.
From start to finish, if and when you get the permission to do this, what time frame are you looking at?
I would have to defer to the project owner, I don't know if they have a contractor lined up, might have one.
2 to 4 weeks? 3 to 4 weeks.
My general estimation,
It's
That's-
very tiring. I mean, every single summer, construction, right alongside our house, dirt, dust, noise, you know, it's tiring. I mean, get finished.
Okay.
That's it? Thank you. Sir, please come to the microphone.
My name's Russell Allen, and I live at 811 Brook Street, 4 doors down from the solar farm.
Okay.
Have any of you gentlemen ever heard of Sally Richmond Brook?
Of course I have.
And I know you would, Mr. Woods. You know, and you're exactly right. The water that comes down there. The thing is, the source of the Sally Richmond Brook is right behind the solar farm. If you go up there after a heavy rain, the water it's a spring. The water is oozing out of the ground there and running down the hill. That's why you get water in those retention ponds that you built 3 or 4 days after. That water's still going in them ponds. It's not just the rainwater. It's the water coming down that hill, and it's thousands of gallons of water. And you might even think of putting a well there for the town. There's so much water coming down there, you know? And when I built my house over 35 years ago, and I put 6 inches of stone under the foundation, I put a French drain, I spent a lot of money. And I didn't want to have water, and I put a well. I don't want to have water problems. Then we got a 30-year rain. About a month after, the water came up. It's not nuisance water coming into my house. It's coming up for the ground. 18 feet in my medium level land, 18 feet down is the water table, okay? And it's lower on my lower end. It's higher at the lower end. And it's increased so much. The most, on a heavy rain, I pump out of my house maybe 2 days. That's a heavy rain. I pumped from my house 5 weeks straight this year. I know we had a lot of rain, but 5 weeks straight. You know, that's a lot of water that I pumped, that pumped continuously running 5 weeks straight. I've been there 35 years. The most it's ever run is 2 days, and we've had, in the past 35 years, a lot of rain. So what he's doing here, that's not helping. No. You know, that's going to help the rain inside the, hey, I'm all for solar, believe me. I'm green, I'm all for solar, wind, I'm all for solar. Put it in the right place. I'm not for cutting down 10 acres of prime timber when we have so much open land like on Middle Street. Perfect, okay? But I think the whole thing was the engineer didn't take into account that behind that, not too far behind that, is the Richmond source of the Richmond Brook. And I was there because the water was coming down so fast. I was getting, this is 35 years ago. I went walking up. I'm there, wow. You could see, it's like it coming right out of the ground. Yeah. And it's coming down days after a heavy rain. So that's why you see, after it rains, there's still water in that retention pond because there's still water going in from the brook, the spring. So whatever you do is not going to change anything unless you pipe that down to the watershed, similar to what is done on the developments on Pine Street. You know, there's a catch basin on Pine Street, and they piped it all the way down to the water basin. The water comes out off that really strong into that catch basin, and then it curs into the field, and they piped it all the way down. And that's the only way you're going to see. Other than that, you're going to end up pumping, and there's going to be one heck of a swamp on those 4 people's property that you're creating, you know. And Beausoleil, I could see his, but that's not going to go. What you're doing is not going to help. It really isn't, unless you just keep pumping it into the swamp that you made. And now I think if you look on the map, three doors down from the solar pond, it shows a pond there, and it usually dries up this time of year, and it's full. It's covering the guy's driveway. He can't even come out of it to pick up his granddaughter because his driveway.
Yeah, there's a vernal pool there.
Yeah, and that's that. It's the water coming off the spring, and that's always going to be there. That's you could put 6 retention ponds there, Or the only other thing is you pipe it down to Main Street, that way. That's the only way I think.
Be doing that.
But to relieve the solar farm and throw it onto my house, that's not right. That's not right. No, it's, someday, it's gonna reach my leach field. And it's not gonna be, what do I come 5 years from now or a year from now and say, hey, my leach field's gone, you know? So, I think the original study should have been made that behind the solar farm is a spring, Richmond Spring. And it just oozes out. Take a walk. I went up there 30 years ago, and I haven't been there since. But when I went up there, it was just bubbling out of the ground. It was amazing.
All right, thank you. Any other public input on this topic? Kevin's gone. Nobody else on Zoom. All right, so we've heard from the applicant, we've heard from the public input present here. Any other questions from members of the board? Or from any other town officials?
I have a question. We talked about not allowing them to go online and different things until the whole system is tested. I'm just concerned if we go into a drought now for the next year. What,
Well, I mean, we're gonna have to see what the engineer says,
okay,
based on what the approach would be. We can't, I don't have a crystal ball. We have no idea what's gonna happen.
okay, I just
But,
want
yeah.
us, I just want everybody to think about that.
Yeah, how we go from here to
Because-
assure that it's gonna
Yeah.
function the way it was designed.
Or maybe we just put something in writing that they will be responsible for whatever, you know what I'm saying? That's, I put myself in their shoes. And that's basically the reason why I'm thinking that way.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep.
Do we, knowing that our next meeting's July 17th, do we know what the time frame would be for Weston and Sampson to review and provide feedback?
Do you have an idea what that might be, Jim? If we do go forward with your proposal here, what your timeline is for providing feedback?
It would take us about 2 weeks to begin, sometime in that time frame, and then probably a couple of weeks to review. We, ultimately provide comments back within about a month of notice to proceed.
So it should have something by the first week of July, thereabouts.
Yeah, if we get approved this week, yeah, I'd imagine so. Yep.
Anything else, ma'am?
I'm not speaking on Mr. Aguirre's behalf, but he's always said that it would not go online until that basin was working.
Right. Agreed. We're just trying to define what that means. Because, as the gentleman said here,
I understand.
if it doesn't rain, we can't test it. If we can't test it, we don't know if it's working. Okay, so at this time, I think you guys have in your package the proposal from Western and Sampson, dated May 28th, 2024. Now, this is addressed specifically to the town administrator, the conservation agent, and the stormwater committee chairwoman. We are accepting this as the planning board as well?
Yeah, so planning board is the issuing, party
Special
for
permit.
permit.
Got it,
So
okay.
it's all under here, but we wanted to make sure we encompassed all those departments, so that everything can be done at once instead of jumping through different departments.
Streamline the process, eh?
Thank you, streamline, that's the word I was looking for.
Okay, so the proposal, bottom line, is 2 tasks. Task 1 is to review the existing design in the amount of $3,080, and task 2 is to support meetings, or saw something that could be up to 5 meetings, but it doesn't necessarily have to include that, and to the amount of $4,250 for a grand total of $7,330. So, at this time, somebody make a motion to accept the Western and Sampson scope of services proposal.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any discussion before we take it to a vote? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. That's 4 ayes. All right, and I think at this time we can get a motion to continue the public hearing for Grasshopper Energy to July 17th.
Make that motion?
Second.
Motion made, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 4 ayes. All right. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes, May 1st, 2024. Will you make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of May 1st, 2024.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All right. Any other correspondence? Any additional public input? Sir? Yes, sir.
I'll ask the members of the planning board and also Mr. Cavallo as the representative to Serpent.
All right, if you could
There's been
please
much-
state your name and address.
I'm sorry. Leonard Hall, 760 Main Street, Dayton.
Thank you.
There has been some confusion as to whether or not the town of Dayton is officially part of the MBTA impact zone. And what I'm asking this board
I
is
have-
for something in writing.
I have no question, and I emailed the Board of Selectmen 2 years ago stating that we are, in fact, part of the MBTA impact zone.
Is that information publicly accessible? Is it in writing?
It's in your inbox. I can put it there again if you'd like.
Yes, thank you.
He's
Okay.
not on the Board of Selectmen anymore.
It was always a yahoo.com account anyway.
Mr. Cavallo,
Now it's
let me
iCloud.
remind you
iCloud.
that I can, since it is a public document, request it through the Freedom of Information Act or public records.
I wasn't holding it back, so you don't need, no, by all means do that. It'll take longer.
No, I understand, but any help you
It'll be
could be.
months before you get that email.
Thank you.
Or I could just send it to you,
Send it to me.
like right now.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. To your iCloud account, yes? To your iCloud account.
Thank you so much.
I'll do that right away. You got it. All right, any other public input? If we could do something about the heat in here, it really is, it's cold, it's freezing.
No,
You're
it's not.
funny.
Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
All in favor? Oh, we get a second.
Need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, Cable.